And we are live. Hello, welcome to BetaCodex Live. I'm Ryan Erickson. On the screen to your right, and my front is Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Niels. And we were just talking in our pre-show about two things, one of which I have to say immediately is that our last episode was focused on the book Confronting Our Freedom by the inimitable Peter Block and Peter Kostenbaum, who sadly passed away late last year. Confronting Our Freedom, Peter Block, Peter Kostenbaum, just happens to be that Peter Block, who lives in Cincinnati, where I live, he came into contact with our video and gave us a real nice compliment of, I suppose I could say that we are, oh gosh, there's something about us being uniquely and beautifully radical. So I think I'll own that if you'll own that too.
Well, we're happy that we received a lovely message from Peter Block, and let's see what comes from that, right?
Indeed. Let us see. So to all those of you out there who watched last week's episode, it was fantastic. It was amazing. So this week, the second thing we were talking about in our pre-show was the topic of organization. I came up with this topic a few days ago, organizational healthcare, inspired by many things, and I'll talk about that in a second. And the first thing I want to say about that is my original title that I brought forth was Healing, Hygiene, and Harm. And my conversation partner on the right side of the screen, he did not care for that, which was surprising to me. That harm is kind of a provocative thing, I think, because the metaphor that came to mind, hygiene. If you know the work of the BetaCodex and the work that happens in transformation, part of that is organizational hygiene. And Niels, we've talked about that a little bit, but there's a lot of dirty, awful kind of stuff that happens in an alpha organization, all the meetings and the committees and all this kind of stuff that needs to be cleaned to allow for a transformation to happen and be effective. And that's my understanding of it. Of course, as we get into the topic, you can make some distinctions there also. Mm-hmm. And what that moved from hygiene to harm, that to me, the metaphor that came into mind was, if we're talking about bureaucracy, and specifically that's kind of the things that this hygiene is, well, you can either go in with let's say a chainsaw and cut that bureaucracy apart, which would be pretty harmful, or you can go in intentionally and thoughtfully and with dialogue and conversation, help an organization become fit for humanity, fit for complexity, and ready for change. And the metaphor that came to mind, which is why I came to harm, was like brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth is good hygiene, just good dental hygiene. And what do you do that with? Toothbrush and toothpaste. Well, you could also do that with a power drill and basically ruin your mouth and ruin your whole face and cause great harm. And I think that the idea of caring for a living being and a living entity, it is very simply there's care involved. There's not reckless destruction and wanton hate necessarily to cause harm. So that was what came in my mind, and also around talking about an alpha organization being a dead thing. And if a beta organization is a live thing, we want to, with the thing, whatever, to continue to nourish and allow that living system of human beings and interaction to flourish. You want it to be healthy. And how do you care for a living being to be healthy? So that was where the thought came from, and that addressing bureaucracy and how it can be done violently or how it can be done with care.
What inspired you, Ryan, to suggest this topic then?
There's
something that triggered. By the way, organizational healthcare is not meant as healthcare in organizations, right? It's about organizations.
Correct.
Health of organizations and of creating healthy organizations. That's what
I should have said organizational health. Maybe we could
no,
that
it's
could have
good. I
been
think
clearer.
it's a little teasing. I like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
lots of time. But
So
what inspired you then? What triggered you to suggest a topic? Was this something, an article or something that you read or saw?
no, it was just my witnessing of the political and legislative and
Yeah.
executive branch hijinks that are happening here in the U.S. Right,
You think that is
and
hygiene or is it harm?
that's harm. That's a total care and lack of respect for humanity,
Uh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it is damaging in so many ways.
Yes.
And again, and even because you and I ideologically not necessarily in the same place, but I think we share enough of our humanity to realize that what's happening, with the American governmental structures, to get rid of waste, to really be that violent and angry about it, I think that's a pathway to
I think getting rid of waste is a
terrible things.
good. It's a worthy undertaking for those who do the work. Everybody should strive to get rid of waste, but I mean, I think yesterday or today was this chainsaw incident where I think
Yeah.
Mr. Musk imitated Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who
Oh my.
in his election campaign loved to be seen with a chainsaw, to symbolize that he would cut down bureaucracy. But of course, bureaucracy cannot be cut down chainsaw massacre style. It will always grow back, and unless you eliminate the reason for bureaucracy, you will never actually get rid of bureaucracy. And also, this approach of chainsawing everything, it doesn't create there's an excellent, I think, piece on The Economist about that, what the Doge people claim to do, which is reducing waste and reducing spending, is not actually materializing because you put this or destroy institutions. So interesting topic. Not so what we are talking. We'll be talking.
We're not talking about assholes. This is not the asshole episode.
Assholism, exactly. We will not talk. We will not focus on organizational assholism, as we do not promote societal assholism, of course.
No, right, absolutely. And to bring it back to the human body, and this is one area that I'm not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a metaphor, we haven't really talked about that, and I don't know necessarily whether that feels, that's in line with how you think about it. I mean, but what, maybe it is, my thinking about the getting Doge aside, cutting your arm to the bone and trying to heal back from that is
it's worked for certain X-Men.
Pardon?
It works for certain X-Men.
Oh yeah, X-Men and Wolverine or Deadpool and all that kind of good stuff. But
not in real life. Yeah.
No, not in real life. And again, it's that causes more harm to a body and living being with spirit, love, heart, and heart health, healing, hygiene, and heart. So, what do you think? What is your take on the organization as a living entity, as in the human body metaphor? I rather like it.
What do you rather like?
I think the metaphor of I dig metaphor a lot, that there's a bone structure, there's a skeleton, that there's musculature on top of that skeleton, there's a nervous system that that sends signals from place to place. It kind of falls apart with the brain is the center of everything, which is not necessarily the truth.
I have to look at the door. What's happening at the door? Just give me a second.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go back to full screen. So the organizational body, right? What am I talking about? We talk about skeleton, talk about muscle, talk about nervous system, the blood of an organization. If an organization is a human being, you got all those systems of systems, cells that make up the organs. Right. I don't need to do Physiology 101 necessarily for those of you out there. But all of those parts of a human body, and there's one part that's missing that I think is very important. Why I like that is actually the part of the human organism that you can't see. That is the spirit, the soul, the heart, the part of the being that has values and has thoughts and feelings and ideas, as opposed to the instrumentation of the musculature and the cells and the nervous system and systems of systems, as I was starting to go. So it falls apart in certain places, and you can have, I think it's an interesting conversational starter. What is your feeling on that?
I hope not to disrupt your because I enjoyed how you laid that out, how you explained that. However, thinking about organizational hygiene, I would like to add a different way of looking at organizational health care. And if we assume that organizations are totally consist of communication, as we systems theorists say, organizations consist entirely of communication. They do not consist of people, but of people's communication. Yeah. For example, if you sack one CEO and hire another one, then oftentimes not much changes, because the communications patterns are so similar that not much changes. And it doesn't matter for an organization if you have a tall employees or less tall employees. Yes. Because organizations do not consist of people. They consist of communication patterns between their members and communications patterns with the exterior, with stakeholders and owners and the government and so on. So if we talk about organizational healthcare, I would argue that it's all about curating relationships and channeling the quality of relationship so that, and while you were talking, one of these quotes of my Austrian friend Ernst Weichselbaum came to mind, who says our ambition as individuals must be to increase the total sum of smiles.
Oh, wow.
In life and in organizations, which is a beautiful way to put it, right?
Well, and I think that also comes back to the theme, a little bit of heart. Maybe this is why you talked about putting heart at the end.
Exactly. Absolutely. Exactly. So whenever we want to change something, and also if we say, we want to fight waste, of course, there are thousands of ways to do that, reducing the total sum of smiles and hurting and insulting and depreciating people, and that would mean to reduce the quality of relationships, to hurt relationships. And again, organizations consist entirely of communication or relationships, if we want to express it that way. So or as Russell Eckhoff says, in living systems, the challenge is not to improve it's not the main challenge is not to improve the parts, but to improve the interactions between the parts. That is very much.
It's like Popeye having a giant right arm and having a puny left arm, and doing that kind of. Are you familiar with Popeye the Sailor Man?
Sure, I just didn't get I don't get the connection with it.
Well, you've seen arm wrestlers necessarily, so they build up one arm giant, and then the other arm is just like this little Tyrannosaurus Rex thing on the side, and bringing a cough into this as well. There's systems, and your nervous system communicates with your muscular system, which communicates with the digestive system, and that there are systems of systems in relationship, and this also, so there's that. The metaphor still works, I think. And you mentioned relationships, and this is, I think, where this is one of the things that's just the beauty of beta, in that is that if you go back to Follett, and I was reading Follett Creative Experience more deeply recently. It's about the circular response. It is that I am relating with you, you are relating with me, and we are relating to the relationship between us and also to the environment around us. Mm-hmm. So it is, and this also has this idea of constant evolution, constant change, and the changing of change. And that, as opposed to I'm a static being, You are a static being. I respond to you, I interact with you, and that's it. And this idea of circular response, it just said, oh wow, that's totally beta, and I totally get where that happens. In that, I don't have the cell structure design poster up here, but that happens. So, all right, I still think it is a living system, human body. I think it's still.
Of course, we agree that organizations are living systems, and thus the metaphor of comparing organizations to humans, living things, that's very can be very useful, right? Oh, we totally agree on that. Yes, and there is a certain. I mean, when we come to the term hygiene, that also matters, right?
And I think there are aspects of hygiene also. So when we talk about healthcare and care, what kind of health are we talking about when we talk about organizations? Well, and if we go back to the human body, physical health is very important. So if you have fat tissue in certain part of your body, you could either liposuction it, which is pretty harmful, and or you can do some kind of surgery, or you can endeavor to change your diet, physical activity, which is a longer process, but it is eventually a transformational process, and one that requires maintenance and hygiene, and dare I say, constant preparation and attention, as opposed to kind of an intervention. So,
yes, I think the whole idea that organizations merit the effort of continuous cleansing and rejuvenation and healthcare, so to speak. That is, it's apparently it's not very clear to many people. So even many people who deal with change, organizational development, and stuff like that seem to think that just adding stuff on top is enough, right? New tool, a new fad. And new nomenclature, but it is very important for organizations to also overcome their system, to rejuvenate, to transform on a certain level.
Yeah. And wouldn't you think that let's say a hospital system, or even just a single hospital, would have a kind of a eureka moment that, well, if as an organization we treated each other with that mindset of wellness and health, then there may open up so many different possibilities for growth and change and adaptation, build the capacity to do that. But what we see in the marketplace and in the environment are the dead systems of power over and functional division and competition in many ways. It is a little bit different in hospital systems because of how the professions interact. But I would say that on a whole, that hospital system organizational structures are relatively alpha. And also, you'd think that a transformation, there might be a little bit more, shall we say, acceptance or understanding of the idea to go to a decentralized, federalized, and self-organized set of structures, because that is so human.
I don't quite understand what was behind that. Maybe I didn't.
Well, no, it's a transfer. Let's just take a market sector, a market segment of healthcare.
Yes.
Delivery of healthcare. Why are healthcare systems and hospitals also structured in alpha way instead of a beta way? What has caused?
I would say ignorance.
Ignorance and ignorance, not as I'm willfully ignorant, but it is an ignorance, I would say, of the managerial class having been educated in alpha, which
that's
happens.
what. Yes. That's
and so then it becomes I forget the word, but it is a responsibility that, as advocates for BetaCodex principles and transformation, for you and I and those others who believe, to be educators, to invite learning, and to help the organizational body heal, right? This is part one. This is the healing from alpha and becoming healing through hygiene, and then to heart, which was another aspect of what I wanted to bring in before I started to fly off into healthcare system land.
Yeah, I think okay, let me see if I got that.
So disagree, please. Let's go there.
No. For clarification, maybe I think what you hinted at is that in hospitals, for example, we have some kind of stratification of organization of hospitals, that we have a system of classes, right? Class divides.
Yeah.
Doctors versus nurses versus cleaning personnel.
Chief of surgery versus resident versus fellow versus intern versus student. That whole kind of thing.
That's a career progression thing. What you just explained?
Yeah. Well, in a hospital, if as a physician, you enter into, you are matched as a medical student. Well, you go through medical school, and as a medical student, you have an internship, and that internship can grow into a fellowship, which then you become a resident physician, and then there's a status. There's a status hierarchy.
But I think what I wanted to hint, not at the career progression of a doctor, but as the division that comes from identifying doctors as one class within all career progressions of doctors, and then you would have nurses as a different category, and other categories. Let's say diagnostic, administration, cleaning, whatever that might be. And I might not be choosing the proper words, but let's say dividing the professions, so to speak. Yes. Yeah. And also identifying doctors as the most noble of all professions in hospital. It's very similar in airlines, I think, where the pilots and the flight attendants seem to be two different professions and castes. So entirely different that you cannot mix them.
The labor organization is different. I mean, they're unionized.
Exactly, following labor organization. But if you look at value creation and value creation structure, you would soon identify that pilots and flight attendants and ground personnel make up functionally integrated teams or cells.
Absolutely.
So the organization in a functional professional mode, doctors versus nurses or pilots versus flight attendants, doesn't give you many options for improvement. In a way, that creates already a brutalization of organizations, because then you create thinking that is beyond value. Yes, that is counterproductive. Yes, and unhealthy.
Unhealthy. Well, and you see this sclerotic kind of structure, and it is rampant in education. Also, so there's administration, there's faculty, and then there's staff. The three giant towers, and there's rancor and distrust between the administration and the faculty, and all those administrators. There's too many administrators. Dare I say, waste at the administrative, and then the administrators, but they impose their budgets and their targets upon faculty. Yes.
Something similar, I think, happens in hospitals, where administrators now impose for 20, 30 years, it has become fashionable, I think, that administrators impose their rule book, their budgets and targets and measures and so on everybody else, with deadly consequences sometimes. Yes. Creating more and more waste. So yes, that's a way to disrupt organizations negatively and produce harm, not heart. Yes.
Yes. I would like to take this. Is there anything more you wanted to say about those the metaphors of, we're talking about competition before I take it somewhere else? So the other, this is my topic, right? So the other thing I wanted to say. So we're talking about physical health. The material, the material matter of the human body. And there are, even in the human system, there's mental health, there's this mental fitness, and there is also the spiritual fitness and how you engage with, whoever higher authority, if you do believe in a higher authority, even if it is just in the mystery of humanity. That's the spiritual nature, the spirit and the heart and the emotional health. So those items, and I think those also have analogs in an organization. And I think in Harrison Owen's work hits that at the core in terms of that an organization it is relational, and it is the spirit. It is my passion and desire to take responsibility for something to happen. That's not about the structure. That's not about wanting to change the deck chairs on the Titanic. That is about a deep desire for change, and that is an embodiment of the human spirit and the relational nature of an organization. So what does healthcare mean in terms of the organizational mind and the organizational heart and the organizational spirit, in addition to hygiene of the body? I can make an assertion, or if
please
or, again,
do so.
if
Please do so, because for me this is a little this is tough to grasp.
I think if we were on LinkedIn and I made a post and you were commenting on it, I would guess that you would call it esoteric. That is a little bit more. It's my guess.
Yes, but that sounds very judgmental, and I try not to be that judgmental all the time. But in a conversation like ours, I would say I find it hard to follow.
Well, okay, so I am. So that is, I tend to be hard to follow.
I mean, I'm happy that you quoted did you mention Harrison Owen's book? There is one about spirit, right? It's called Spirit.
It's his first book. It's just called Spirit.
And I admit, I always found it difficult to read those books as well. I do not feel a deep connection. Maybe that's my little.
No, I mean the dig
a little bias that I have, but I do not. It doesn't. I do not get spirituality as much as other people do it. My relationship maybe is a little bit crippled to that. Yeah. So
I wouldn't.
Maybe I
get
it.
Judgmental and say it's crippled, but Harrison in his work, he's consistent that he says the same thing a lot. And he has the same thing in many different ways.
Yes,
I think that was a criticism that we originally had of Peter Vale's work too, is that he does say the same thing, but again,
that I also have trouble connecting it parts. I'm more. I mean, last time we talked about Peter Kostenbaum's book, and this what Peter Block and Peter Kostenbaum would call existentialist. That's very much closer to my heart, or constructivism. Or systems theory. So those are things that I find it easier to relate to. And I'm not sure why that it's an inclination. Maybe that's because I have a little bit of autism too. A tiny little autist thing.
This is new. We had never discussed that.
I only learned about it this year as well, or at the end of last year. Yes, but I find it's probably accurate. So, but a little bit. I'm not a grown autist, I think.
Well, I've also, and again, I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone out there who's ever watched our interactions. I have a very large theme of ADHD and kind of what I do, because I go off, and I go off in many different ways.
Yes, so. I mean that's expressed by your one of your podcasts is called Riffing with Rijon. That's already it gives away your inclination very much so, right? I would never call one of my podcasts Riffing with Niels or something. No. Let's not riff.
No.
Nail it down, please.
Nail it down. So that
to the point with Niels.
To the point. Well, so whoever wants to help Niels produce his podcast, you're out there. I know you are. Or Knowledge with Niels, or Nail It Down with Niels.
Exactly.
So either way. So I also want to make a connection to. Did you want to say any more about the different aspects of health before I jumped to another topic?
Not sure where you want to jump, but what I found beautiful and interesting in your choice of words and the topic is that, of course, I would identify Beta with the healing program, the ultimate organizational spa treatment. If we want to create healthy organization. There's no way around beta. Look at alpha principle incentivizations. Power over instead of power with. That is not. It's neither fit for human beings nor personal health nor organizational health or healthy relationships, as we discussed. So yes, it's another way to look at BetaCodex principles, to say, okay, in a healthy organization, in democratic societies, in the face of complexity, of course they must rely on beta principles, not alpha principles. They must, in order to produce a healthy organization with and contributing to the health of human beings relating to that organization, inside or outside, of course they must be beta. Organizations must be decentralized precisely because there is no healthy relationship with the market in a centralized modus. There is no healthy relationship in organizations if you use command and control or alpha and power over structures. So healing, hygiene, and heart, for me, that is all very intimately related to decentralization and beta principles. Yes. So of course I want to say, well, let's go with it. Yeah. And the healing, I think we haven't talked about the healing at all. So that might be an interesting topic as well to touch upon. Why healing?
I'll put a point. So the small point, what I was receiving from to reflect on when you're talking about what is the power over. We're talking about all of the principles that come, and then another Pflaeging principle. Well, I think this may be your words. It's the with each other, for each other.
Yes, that comes from a company in Germany, DM. Yes, and I adopted it. Yes.
Yes, and that to me. And the reason why I just wanted to bring that in was not a distinction, but kind of a different nuance of esprit de corps. So this idea of esprit de corps being the with each other, for each other, that social density and being with teams, and also the other flavor to that is this idea of confronting. That confrontation is not combat, and that. So this confronting with each other, for each other, to have integration, which is another Pflaeging term. Is that what we talk about in the socially dense small team? Is this idea of in social density? It's not like unified, boring harmony. There is dissonance there, but there is not combat. So that's a distinction. Just because you have confrontation, you don't have combat. And if you go to combat, then that becomes very adversarial and kind of damaging. So,
yes.
So that was a period on that sentence. So to take it back to healing, when you think of healing, how do you think of that, and why was that resonant for you?
Oh my goodness! Now that's a good question, because of course I'm not sure how you feel about that, but when I'm doing consulting work, currently we have 2 clients we are working with around transformation. One of the companies already did the basic transformation, did an open space beta chapter, so they did the transformation in 90 days. Now we are in the post transformation phase, but many things still can be improved and need to be clarified, like practicing peer recruiting, for example. You cannot learn all the practices of beta in 90 days. Some things will be done afterwards, and we're doing that with the client. And there's still and like every interaction that we have with the client, or the client has with us as consultants, with Silke and myself, a lot is about healing. A lot is about overcoming healing the wounds of alpha that have been produced over the last couple of years or 10 years in that organization. Often the conflicts or the wounds reach back historically a decade or so. So
childhood trauma, maybe
not exactly that, but of course lots of for example, one topic that frequently comes up with that client is that those 2 were terrible enemies. Now they're working in a cell together, and the conflict is forgotten. They are the best pals now, and working collaboratively, and it's overcome. And this kind of healing, I think that's what I think also matters in beta. You cannot expect in an alpha command and control organization with an over accentuation of hierarchy and bureaucracy and steering, you cannot expect people to overcome conflict constructively and to reach integration and to create productive, to use dissent productively, because it's just not possible in a command and control. It's not likely, at least, to have what Mary Parker Follett calls integration. So yeah, we see that a lot. And also, there's another client that we are approaching a bit open space beta chapter with now, and there are a lot of issues of healing. Last year they had strong infighting between departments, between different units of the organization. They had a system that sadly provoked infighting and conflict and wasteful, interactions, and a huge loss of trust. And now, in order to heal, in order to really decentralize, they also need to heal the fucked up relationships that they produced last year. And we even used this vocabulary in a recent workship. So,
I mean, you're talking about damage. There's damage done.
There's a lot of damaged tissue.
Yeah, damaged tissue, and damaged tissue takes time to heal, and it takes care, and
but also time is not the only. And I think time, it's interesting, right? That's an interesting topic. I think in organizational healthcare, I think time, of course, time heals everything, but you do not have that much time. Often you need to fix relations, especially if you want to decentralize, transform an organization within 90 days. Then you cannot leave the body to its own resources and to the power of time passing. You have to create interventions that can produce the healing. How to produce trust? If you had a severe erosion of trust in an organization last year, that was produced by the system, right? Not just evil people going berserk, but structure going berserk and producing malicious interactions, let's say.
Toxic relationships.
Toxic relationships, distrust, and erosion of trust and so on. So you cannot, in organization transformation, I think we have to go beyond the force of time. We have to, in order to accelerate it, we have to create interventions, how to create more discourse, more conversation, how to, create, how to disperse the fear that
fear is like the cancer of the organization, right? Or whatever is the deep wound that alpha creates fear. And what does Deming say? You drive out that fear, and that if the fear is a toxin, I mean, cancer, and as being a recovered cancer patient, there was a severe intervention that had to happen in my body in order for me to overcome cancer, and not every. So if there's an organizational toxin, it could be severe that requires a severe intervention, or there's an intervention that is maybe less severe. But I think if we're talking about an organizational body in healthcare, and there's a difference between someone who is not a competitive athlete, or who is not on a football team or some sort, and who has a very high level of strength and agility in their body, and they require a different kind of intervention and a different kind of ongoing maintenance or care and hygiene, because their existence is in a competitive environment, much as a for-profit or even a nonprofit corporation is. And then we talk about this is market steering too, that there is market competition, and that is we haven't talked about healthy competition external to the sphere of activity of an organization, but if you are a professional, I'm a pro, we are pros working on a professional team. Okay. We are competing with another team from another organization. We're not necessarily competing with other, we are kind of having sportsman-like competition within, but we are still professionals. We require a higher degree of maintenance. There is a time pressure. That's what I was getting to, is that the transformation, if it takes forever, you're not you're not acknowledging that you, as an organization, as an organizational body, you're in a competitive environment. You're just kind of fading back into age, death.
Yes, and I think, I'm not sure if this is connected with what you just said. How will you heal an organization from suffering that was, or people in their relationships that were suffering, or that's suffered from command and control, toxic system setup and so on? How to heal that damage if people mostly work from home? I think that's a huge issue as well. In organizations, at least that's something that we perceive in our consulting work, with employees in some industries, with employees that have become used to working from the home office most of the time, and that have kind of cocooned in a way socially. How to make an organization heal if many members of the organization buried themselves in their home offices.
Well, how do you develop
disconnected from each other?
Well, how do you heal a loss of trust if you never spend time with someone really close to them?
Exactly. You have to produce FaceTime. That's, of course, one of the healthy conclusions. Something like open space is brilliant for that. Physical encounter, small group conversation, which can even be virtual. It doesn't all have to be, on site. But Comenius is another way. Our learning platform is another way to produce this kind of interaction in an online mode, to produce actual conversation and real heart in conversation, so to speak. Yeah,
heart and spirit, heart and spirit and soul.
It's a challenge, in today's societies, disrupted societies. You mentioned what's happening in the United States right now, disrupted organizations that were disrupted by COVID, for example, and that are usually disrupted by command and control, power play, politics, bureaucracy, and steering, and where people might be, largely feeling isolated. Again, I'm not talking about all kinds of industries.
Well,
industries do not suffer from home office overtime.
I want to take that back to the body. We're talking about, so an alpha organization is a great, strong, very strong, paternalist, masculine, competitive, like very, we're fighting. Maybe you're fighting with each other. We're a large bank that exists in America, and that it's a Bank of America. Okay, never mind. But that a very competitive environment that is healthy. And if you take the people away from one another, right, who are competing in life, then this alpha organization, it crumbles, it atrophies, as a human body would atrophy if is isolated from other human beings. And I think that's what maybe you're alluding to, is that we're talking about atrophy, and that how does a person recover from atrophy? And there's a physical health, and then there's this emotional health that you can only get so much from, even if you really are connected with someone here virtually. It is, again, you're speaking to that. I'm just kind of reiterating it, is it's important to be in person with someone, because that experience is fundamentally different, and it's important to acknowledge.
Yes. Connecting people well with each other, it's not an easy feat in certain environments. Let me put it this way. Yeah? And in order to produce organizational health and healing, to produce this kind of social density it's a big feat, at least again in certain industries. Yeah, not in hospitals that much, or maybe not in physical production sites where physical production happens. The challenges are others, but
you can't avoid laying hands on a person if you're in the medical profession.
Exactly.
Telehealth will only work so far, you know.
Last year, we worked with a pharmaceutical company and the production, pills and so on. That created a different kind of isolation, by the way. You know, that company was organized in just one site, 500 people or so. But still, the social density was not easy to produce, because within the production plant, everybody has to wear masks all the time and so on. There are huge hygiene,
like full body, or
full
rabbit suits.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the proper word would be, but yes, yeah. I only went to do that production, I think, once or twice, you know, and I had to pull on the whole thing, you know, and
where did they do the open space? How did the open space happen for that organization? Was it at one site, multiple sites? How much was in person? How much was virtual?
That was in one site, of course, 400 people. Yes, in something like a gym, it's like a school gym or something. You know, big space, 400 people. Yeah, both open spaces, I think, had around 400 people. Yes. Yeah. The first might have had, I think it had 420, which is typical, you know, that in the first open space, around 80-90% of people will be there. Yeah. But still, you know, it was amazing for everybody to encounter each other without the, the work attire that you need to have in the plant, you know, the plant was
to see someone's face, maybe
to see the
finally
face
see the face,
and the individual
to shake the hand, to have a hug.
Yes, and to have, you know, individualism expressed through the clothing and so on. Yeah, that was very interesting.
I want to take this. You mentioned time a little bit, and I think time invites a discussion of the beginning and end. You know, there's the beginning of life of an organization. There's the birth of it into, you know, a combining of male and female, and a creation of a life. So there's organizational birth. Then there's this growth into adolescence, adulthood. And then one part that is not talked about often, I think this came up in Confronting Our Freedom too, and this is the core essay of Peter Kostenbaum, being the vitality of death, and to acknowledge that an organizational body over a long period of time, we assume that an organizational machine can just go on forever and scale and scale and scale. But you and I, as human beings, we have a finite time on this planet. And if we recognize that, I think it is helpful to say there's palliative care, you know, there's hospice care for an organization.
That's called consulting. That's called consulting.
No, that's organizational murder, right? That's harm. It's that you're inflicting, you're injecting toxins into an organization. That's good. You can be. Or either way, but
live forever. Yes. Survival is optional.
Yeah, and survival is optional. But death is a fact of life, and in that, this also brings me back to, and this is a very deep part of Harrison Owen's work, and that doesn't often get addressed, is grief. That there's a loss, and there is a shock and anger, there is a denial, and there is, in Harrison Owen's framing, it's not the Kubler-Ross kind of thing. It's different. There are the intertwining shock and anger because loss happens, like, oh my God, what's happening? The denial. And then Harrison talks about memories. What are the memories of the good times of what our organization was? And now, okay, we got the memories. And then it is silence and just acknowledgement of what was in the memory. And then there's, I think, despair. There's a big open space in the grief cycle from Harrison Owen's perspective. There's open space as denial, open space as silence, open space as despair, and then this vision coming out of that, the depths, the vision from the depths of despair, I think, and then on into an organization reborn and maybe resurrected, right? So the spiritual and religious aspect of it, but reborn from vision into a new birth. And this is, you could say, organizational death when it dies. And then there's also an alpha to beta transformation too. So alpha is gone. It's gone. We had some good times, but now those good times are gone. And let us now go through the liminal space into rebirth.
Yes, that reminds me of William Bridges' concept, Managing Transitions, big best-selling book in the 1990s, I think, where he says and this is in the Organize for Complexity book as well, that change begins with the ending and ends with the beginning. Because in order to produce significant change, there must be, you don't have to let go, but you have to end something to, for example, admit to yourself as well that something must end, so that you can enter the neutral zone, as William Bridges calls it. So there's the ending of something, like you want to quit smoking. You have to admit certain things to yourself, that's related as well. In a way, the ending should happen before or during the open space, right? And the beginning as a ritual, part of the ritual of beginning the new is happening in open space meeting too as well. Yes, it's very, and the neutral zone happens in the 90 days in a way. These concepts are kind of related. Yes, of course, it's not as simple as that, because this concept of review that you are just showing, there are cycles and iterations within the 90 days, within the 60 days at the beginning, and so on. But overall, that structure is reflected, in I think in open space as well, where you begin and end consciously. Yes, in every open space.
And we talk about that. This also kind of goes to Lewin, too, in terms of, this is just we're frozen over here, we unfreeze here, and blah, 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 that happens, and then we freeze again. But I don't really think that's accurate necessarily. I mean, it's kind of I wonder how you reconcile that unfreezing with open space beta and
no, I think that's it is something that could have been remarked in an article, this unfreeze, change, freeze thing, but it was never meant as a concept or a method or a framework. So that's a huge misunderstanding. There are great articles about how that needs to be debunked. The understanding that
was it the consulting industry that kind of took that and ran with it?
Yes, like a generation of followers and still number followers of the followers created that impression that Levine depicted change as unfreeze, change, refreeze, which is not accurate at all. In fact, Kurt Lewin is famous for his field concept, right? Mm-hmm. That takes us back to our topic, right? In Levine's field theory, which is something like a mathematical visualized systems theory, he illustrated or depicted opposing forces that are created by actors and objects and constellations, So he envisioned systems as living fields in which many different forces apply. For example, within you, there might be hope and desperation, despair and fear and expectation. And those are partially opposing or each other mutually reinforcing forces. And this is just one person. Another person will have the same forces as well, which you can then analyze and depict, And if you take this kind of image of a system, very complex, right? And then the expectations by outsiders, other stakeholders, and so on. So you might have two people with their own, both have hopes and fears and expectations and whatever, and there are others also. It's a huge mess. It's a cacophony of forces, so to speak.
Whatever is distance. But I think this comes back to Follett as well.
Sure. It's very related, only that I think Kurt Lewin was a little bit more inspired by the exact sciences, by less less political scientist and more social psychologist with
sociology or
he tried, but
psychology?
he always believed that these things could be depicted almost objectively, as mathematical forces. Well, if you take that in mind, that Levine was one of the creators of this kind of field theory, then that doesn't match well with the notion that you can defreeze, change, and refreeze organizations. It's really an opposed assumption about how organizational dynamics work. So,
well, I
Levine
think
can certainly not be insulted in a way that he
well,
was.
and I would like to. This is maybe a call out to a gentleman who I was riffing with, dare I say, a guy named Gil Crosby, who is a Levinian scholar. His dad was
Levinist, as I like to say.
a Levinist.
Okay.
So I think that would be an interesting conversation to bring Gil Crosby. I'll be reaching out to you. But there's also one of the maxims or memes that put out there in your work. I have in times past. I haven't seen it recently, but change is like pouring milk into coffee. I think you've said that before. And I think, well, hey, you got coffee over here, and you pour some lovely milk into it, and then you stir it around, and then you end up here, but you can't go back to black coffee.
Exactly.
There's no way you're getting back to black coffee from coffee with milk and sugar. And then what happens? You turn it into iced coffee, or you turn it into sweet coffee that we Americans love, but you apparently think is not real coffee.
Yes, change is more like adding milk to coffee. It's I think it's a really helpful metaphor. Of course, every metaphor has its limits, but this is a way of understanding change as something that is both natural and light, that happens.
But why? But don't people resist change? Don't.
That's exactly the opposite. Where's the resistance? There's no resistance. There's just reaction. There's consequence. There is momentum, and of course, in organizations, some interventions can be made. Many interventions can be made very consciously. Other things will just happen, and they will change the system, but others can be dosed, and controlled. So we have a way of developing. There is a way of developing organizations, and the notion of resistance to change, which is, by the way, goes back to Kurt Lewin as well, who talked of resistance to change as a systems condition, so to speak, because a system tends, as we now say in systems theory, that was, I think, unknown in Kurt Lewin's time, but today we say that a living system achieves some kind of stability. That doesn't mean a lack of motion, or
it's not dead. That doesn't mean. Yeah, death is stability too, right?
But yes, but here, yes, not really, because death is the absence of stability, the absence of life. The idea of stability means that a system, it can move, but it will try to try to achieve a balance within the certain conditions, the conditions it is suffering, the context and so on. Yes. Now, if you irritate it, it will move, it will flip. That's why we call it a flip. It will flip to another state, and that is the change is more like adding milk to coffee idea that, of course, organizations are sensitive to changes in context, yes, and the resistance that Kurt Lewin talked of clearly was that jumping to a different condition might be slowed by the system. The system is it's in a stable state, so it may not, it may move, in a way that you cannot exactly program, that you cannot steer or control. It will move, but you do not know how. And there's a certain a resistance when you have.
I gotta bring another metaphor in here. I have to bring in another metaphor, which if the architectural metaphor, right? So if you've built a giant skyscraper out of concrete, steel, and glass, that's dead. Right, that is man-made, that is built, that is designed, that stays in the same place, and it it responds. A skyscraper will resist the wind. It will resist. If you try and jackhammer into it and all that kind of stuff, and you can jackhammer it until it goes into the ground, but it's not going to heal by itself. A skyscraper doesn't heal, but a forest, if you go into a forest, is living. The trees go into life, and it requires nurturing from the environment, and you can nurture it as a human being if you are in reciprocal relationship with it. It's hard to be in reciprocal relationship with a thing that you have built from concrete and steel. So that to me, and then the system being, the fixed relationships of authority, the fixed roles. So you have fixed roles, fixed teams, fixed structures, fixed, that there's an assumption that one can predict the behavior of a built system in a controlled environment. Well, is our markets controlled really? Some would argue that they are maliciously controlled, but even a level of control, you can't. It is unpredictable. That's why fixed targets are bullshit, and beta principle. Right. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a drink of water. We're about an hour.
Yes, and I think it's good. It's good. I think we covered a lot of ground.
So do you feel better about this topic as we have now explored it for an hour and 1 minute?
I feel constructively confused. Let's see how it will settle in me.
Well, as we kind of, what I'm hoping to do with these episodes is take our transcript of our, dare I say, riffing here, pop it into a language model, get all the juicy stuff out of it and make some sense out of it. So all the resources, all the books that we mentioned here, maybe some general themes that we had, I'll do some editing on it, and we'll see what that happens. So my incoherent mad scientist ramblings will somehow be brought to sense, and you will have nailed it down.
We riffed. You taught me how to riff a little bit. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that. So what do you have going on? I know there's a translation going on, a particular publication that you may want to say something about.
A translation that's going on?
Well, aren't you? Well, not the one that we talked about in our pre-show, which is but yes. Aren't you doing Organized for Complexity in a different language? Or aren't you doing? I thought I saw something about that.
No.
Okay, so
the laws of the BetaCodex are available in Spanish. That should be. I didn't check about it over the last couple of days, but that is ready. The laws of the BetaCodex booklet, brochure, let's say, it's just 30 pages or so. That is ready. But other translations, let me think. Maybe I forgot it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were going to produce more translations into Spanish. Ernesto confirmed that, but I'm not quite sure how we will do that. Currently, I'm still writing the Relative Targets book. It's enormously slow. The process is slower than I would like it to be because we're doing consulting work in parallel, but that's the translation. Maybe
relative targets in English, relative targets in Spanish. What
in German? I'm writing it in German, and then we will have to see how to get it to English. But when I conclude that book, Relative Targets in German, then I have to get cell structure design in English ready. That's urgent.
You knew I was going to ask about cell structure design.
Yes, quite a few people keep asking me, and I always have to tell them, sadly, I'm not as fast as I would like to be with working on the books.
Complexitools? Do we do Complexitools?
In Complexitools also in the making. Yes.
So always more to come here in the BetaCodex network, BetaCodex Press. What would Deming do? What would Drucker do? And the soon to be written and released, what would Mary Parker Follett? Oh, no, we're not writing that one yet. So, okay. Anyway.
There will be a Follett.
Well, I certainly hope so, because, again, her being foundational to the work here and all the great system thinkers and a theory-backed approach to organizational development and a theory and practice based approach, because you're doing it and have done it. And and you've also had some other guest podcasts. I think one on Benjamin Ingo's channel, the Stellar Work podcast. You did Organize for Complexity there.
Yes.
Which is cool. I hadn't released it yet, but I also did a conversation with our sponsor from the Intuitive Public TV network, Megan Elizabeth Morris, on Follett. We talked about Mary Parker Follett. She wants to go into that a bit more, and I would love to do that. And again, and you out there, folks who may be watching this, please contribute your curiosity, knowledge, and experience to what we are advocating here and what we're doing in the real world with the BetaCodex. So is there anything you wish to say here in the space that you did not get a chance to?
See you all again soon. See you soon again, Ryan. Thank you for the conversation.
We'll see you soon. Thank you, Niels. And we will click the end stream button in StreamYard and see, it'll say something.